Fast Politics 101D Masons on Money. The first U.S. President, George Washington, was a Freemason. Benjamin Franklin and other founding fathers of the Democratic Republic government of the USA were Freemasons too. Although this picture of Franklin in Masonic garb might be a forgery from a picture of Marquis de Lafayette, another Revolutionary-era Freemason of both the U.S. and France, friend of both Franklin and Washington, the fact many of the founding fathers were Freemasons cannot be denied. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th President of the USA, was a Freemason. For his role in government funding nature conservatories, buying up large masses of scenic rural landscapes, Teddy Roosevelt's face was carved onto Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills region of the Cheyenne and Lakota tribes of Native Americans. Roosevelt's face appears here between those of Abraham Lincoln, to the right, and Thomas Jefferson, to the left, and all are lined up to the right of George Washington, on the far left. As shown in the last lecture also, 33rd U.S. President Harry Truman was a Freemason. Truman was the president who staged the fake Japanese suicide bombing mission on Pearl Harbor Air Base in order to provoke the U.S. into entering World War II, and he was the president who ordered U.S. soldiers into war against the Nazis. Not all Freemasons might agree on all political topics. It is this natural disparity of political ideologies between brothers in the lodge that allowed the doctrines and dogma of the Illuminati conspiracy to penetrate the depths of Freemasonic lodges. Although many brother Freemasons are now members of the Illuminati conspiracy, not all are, and not all would want to be, even if they knew they could. The Illuminati, some of whom are also brothers in Freemasonic lodges, have conspired for the past century to control the currency of the United States dollar, and have accomplished this by using the Federal Reserve privately owned central bank of the federal government of the USA to transform the fixed value of gold as a solid form of currency into the fluid exchange rate of liquid fiat paper cash. Ironically, the Illuminati behind the Federal Reserve have traditionally placed the faces of their enemies onto this worthless paper cash and coinage. Thus we have the modern expression, dead presidents, for our money, and the slang, chasing Benjamins, for the capitalist act of acquiring money. This placement of presidents as a place of honor onto this funny money being counterfeited on the Mint's printing press by the laundry racket called the Federal Reserve is an illusion meant to keep us addicted to seeing worthless paper cash as symbolic of real value. We have already established that George Washington, whose face we see here on the front of the $1 bill, was a Freemason. On the back of the $1 bill, opposite the side with President Washington's face, we find the Great Seal of the United States, meant to never be used in vain. The fact that President Washington was a Freemason alone does not necessarily account for how he wound up with his face on our current form of money, but it's definitely a good start. All the Mason presidents on our cash have opposed the idea of allowing the USA to have a central bank. For this reason, all of their faces appear on our paper cash. Consider next our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, whose face appears on the $5 bill. Abraham Lincoln's statue in the Lincoln Memorial sits facing west toward a stele at sunset, symbolizing Anubis, the ancient god of death and holder of the keys to the underworld. Lincoln may or may not have been a Freemason of any kind. However, if we are to seriously consider him one also, then Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, must also be considered one as well. Here we see Booth concealing his hand and his jacket in the standard Masonic hand sign of the Master of the Second Veil. Here we see that founding father, Alexander Hamilton, whose face appears on the $10 bill Federal Reserve note. The 7th U.S. President, Andrew Jackson, whose face appears on the $20 bill Federal Reserve note. The Civil War commander and the 18th President, Ulysses S. Grant, whose face appears on the $50 bill Federal Reserve note. We're all Freemasons, and we're all opposed to the notion of a U.S. central bank, and all have faces that now appear on the same U.S. central bank's funny money. Benjamin Franklin, whose name appears on the $100 bill Federal Reserve note, was a founding father of American Democratic Republican government and a Freemason. Benjamin Franklin was a U.S. diplomat and, as such, was able to serve also as a courier between prominent Freemasons in different distant countries of timely Masonic communiques. As a spy, Benjamin Franklin was for American Masonry what Dr. John Dee was for HMSS, pre-Scotland Yard, pre-MI6 British intelligence. Although this picture with Benjamin Franklin dressed in Masonic garb in it may be a fake based on an identical earlier painting of Marquis Lafayette from the same time period, there is no question that Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason. For contributing the Illuminati symbolism that formed the U.S. Great Seal, Benjamin Franklin is honored by having both his diagrammatic invention and his own visage appear on our worthless fiat paper cash. Abraham Lincoln, symbolizing both Anubis, Egyptian god of the dead, and Moses, the Hebrew prophet who freed his people from slavery to the Pharaoh of Egypt, appears on the penny, the coinage equivalent of George Washington on the paper dollar, as being the most common and worth least amount of money in circulation. On the back of the Lincoln head penny is depicted the Lincoln Memorial. As also mentioned above, the Lincoln Memorial is designed to resemble the architecture of the Temple to Zeus in the Greek Acropolis to their Olympic pantheon. The Lincoln Memorial is designed to symbolize the death of Zeus in exchange for the freedom of the Egyptian slaves, enacted in his life by President Lincoln's setting the African slaves in America free with the Emancipation Proclamation, followed by his being assassinated by a bullet in the brain by Southerner John Wilkes Booth. Thomas Jefferson's face appears in profile facing the opposite direction as Lincoln on the U.S. 5-cent nickel coin. On the back of the nickel coin is the Jefferson Memorial Building, which, as we have already seen, is a large circular dome above an open-air rotunda. The Jefferson Memorial symbolizes the oculus of God, with the enshrined soul of Thomas Jefferson central to its core, peering upward toward the heavens and showing the way to search for ideals in politics. Although Thomas Jefferson was able to get so many Freemasons and Founding Fathers, each with their own political and religious ideologies, to agree on signing the U.S. Constitution, and although Jefferson was instrumental in bringing together the dozens of Freemasons who signed the American Declaration of Independence, because he opposed the idea of a central bank, when it came time to put his face on money, they could only manage to find room for him on the $2 bill. Hence the expression, queer as a $2 bill, because to see one of them in circulation is unusually rare. The face of the 34th President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, is stamped onto the front of the dime or 10-cent piece. Like Jefferson on the nickel, but unlike Lincoln, he looks from right to left. FDR was a prominent Shriner and a pendant body to the proper Freemasonic lodge. FDR was president during the second half of World War II, following Truman. Although aging and suffering from pronounced Parkinson's syndrome, FDR attended the winter post-war peace conference with Winston Churchill of Great Britain and Joseph Stalin of Soviet Russia to lay the groundwork for the modern United Nations, UN. On the back of the dime is a burning fasces, the rod that symbolized state authority in ancient Rome. On either side of this are two twigs of plants, one olive, one acacia, signifying peace restraining the fires of war. Across this motif is scrawled the slogan, E pluribus unum, Latin translating as all for one. This slogan also appears on the banner held by the beak of the eagle in the front side of the U.S. Great Seal. It also shows up on the banner in the beak of the eagle in the U.S. Presidential Executive Seal. The face, looking right to left in profile, of George Washington appears again on the front of the $quarter or 25-cent piece of coin. Because of the writings on the subject by Southern Jurisdiction Scottish Rite Freemason Albert Pike, the Freemasons are often confused by anti-Masons for devil worshippers. Chief among these charges relates the statue of George Washington and his Masonic memorial to the pose of the goat-foot pan god Baphomet in this late 19th century sketch by French magician Eliphas Lévy, drawn before the sculpting of Washington's bust statue. On the back of the $quarter or 25-cent piece coin usually appears an eagle perched on a fasces of arrows above a double olive branch, with its wings downward and the familiar saying E pluribus unum emblazed above its phoenix-feathered bald head. Contrast this symbol for the state authority of the southern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite, free and accepted Masonry, with the symbol for the state authority that can be summoned by the northern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite, free and accepted Masonry. While the wings of the eagle in the south, on the reverse side of the quarter, are folded downward, the wings of the eagle in this logo for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, are upward and in flight. During the year 1976, to commemorate the 200-year bicentennial celebration since the signing of the Declaration of American Independence from Great Britain, the Treasury issued quarters during that year that have a different emblem on their reverse from the usual Southern Eagle motif. On the back of these, somewhat more rare and obscure quarters, minted in 1976, is a marching patriot beating a drum surmounted by the symbol of 13 pentagram stars in a circle around the burning tip of a fasces torch. As on the reverse side of all coins, we see the slogan again translated into Latin for all for one. The last coin we shall be discussing here is the 50-cent or half-dollar piece. These coins are the largest, most rare of the set of U.S. minted coins, and only came into circulation during the mid-1970s. On the front is the profile, looking right to left, of 35th U.S. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JFK. On the back side of the 50-cent piece coin, pressed by the U.S. Treasury Mint, opposite the head of President Kennedy, is the logo of the Executive Office's presidential seal in exact duplicate, displaying the exact differences between this logo and the similar logo of the eagle motif on the front of the U.S. Great Seal. President Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963, in the third year of his term of office as U.S. President. Although to this day rumors and outright conspiracy theories circulate surrounding the details of his killing itself, however, the idea he died for opposing and threatening to dismantle the CIA is a commonly held belief among most Americans. There is cursory evidence placing the later 41st U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush, GHWB, at the scene of the JFK assassination at the time it took place. However, more than that he was, apparently, working for the U.S. CIA at the time remains merely speculation to this day. It is much better recorded, however, that George Bush Sr., GHWB, was a member while at Yale University of the fraternal secret society called Skull and Bones. He is seen here posing for the annual Bonesman's Yearbook photo with the skull of the Native American war hero Geronimo, stolen by his own father Prescott Bush for the frat one generation before. Here is G.H.W. Bush Sr. posing with the surviving presidents to follow Johnson, who had been JFK's vice president, VP. GHWB stands in the middle between Nixon, the 37th U.S. president, on the left, and Reagan, the 41st U.S. president, on the right. Standing next to Nixon on the right is Ford, the 38th U.S. president, on the far left, and on the far right, standing next to Reagan, is Carter, the 39th U.S. president. Each of these men belonged to one order or another, and though they appeared to the public to be competing over different ideologies, always cooperated on how to act while on camera when they met behind the scenes off camera. In this picture of the currently living U.S. presidents, we see from left to right Bush Sr., the 41st President, Barack Hussein Obama, the 44th U.S. President, Bush Jr., the 43rd U.S. President, Clinton, the 42nd U.S. President, and Carter, again the 39th President to serve. These men are all connected to one another through similar methods as the original colonial-era revolutionary Jacobins were in the lodges of free and accepted Masonry. However, these men, unlike our Masonic founding fathers, serve the conspiracy that is behind the Bavarian Illuminati. Just as with the senators who killed Julius Caesar, whose face is seen here in profile again from a silver coin pressed more than 2,000 years ago, these modern U.S. presidents are all accomplices to murder after the fact, and conspirators to commit financial fraud and assume dominant control over all the planet's available resources. And just as with those infamous senatorial assassins, these men have sacrificed their honor, their names, their very souls to become foot soldiers, pawns, in the global political chess game of modern history, on the side that plays by the rules of the protocols of the Elders of Zion, and who use the symbolism of the Bavarian Illuminati, and against the side of personal liberty and personal responsibility advocated by the Masonic founding fathers of the U.S. Constitutional Democratic Republic.